going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. Season 11 might be 2 weeks away from ending. However, the patch extravaganza, I think, has finally ended. The new heroes in, the dust has settled, and I don't think we're getting any major balance changes, bar any maybe rework that might come in the next patch. So, I think it's a good time to reestablish where some of these heroes are sitting and where they're going. And some of these may surprise you, especially the first one, who's the biggest winner of them all right now, is Sombra. Sombra? What? Didn't everyone say that the reworked Sombra on the PTR was useless? Well, I actually lost track of this in translation, and I'm sure many of you did as well. They reworked Sombra on the PTR. Initially, I thought, wow, that's an amazing change. Infinite stealth, it's going to be OP, but then a lot of Sombra experts came out and said, yeah, but that 4-meter detection radius change basically makes her unplayable. She can't sneak anywhere without being undetected, so what's the point? So, the thing that Blizzard did was, without telling anybody, I think, put her to live without the 4 meters of detection radius, and now we have this new era of Sombra who does an outrageous amount of work. On the live version of the game right now, Sombra has all of the upsides that I was hyped about initially, and really none of the downsides. We've seen this at the top level of play right now. Sombra's getting played almost all of the time, but I also think you'll find this works really well in your ranked games as well, because even if you're in solo queue, the new Sombra now is way more forgiving with her stealth tactics, whereas before, you had to really get the timings right, because you were on a clock, it was clicking down, you had to get where you needed to be at the right time, don't get discovered. Now, it doesn't matter, just infinite stealth all the time. Teamfight can end, you can go full invis, and then infiltrate the enemy, wait for the entire full regroup, and always get a perfect initiation. And with that, you almost always can get a perfect hack as well. And because of this, it really has a ripple effect on the entire game. Do I think Sombra is overpowered? Maybe. You guys are going to have to decide after the rest of the community kind of catches up to how good Sombra is and the shenanigans that you can pull off with her, and we're going to have to decide after a bit more playtime, I think. Why is this? Well, Sombra deals with so many things that you might think are going to be troublesome to deal with, and almost single-handedly, without any other characters being involved, destroys the Mercy Zen meta. That already was taking a bit of a hit, thanks to Mercy healing less. Now she can't pocket a Zen through Winston's damage, for example, but just in general, because we're playing this infiltration meta, Sombra can get behind the enemy team, and even though Widow and Hanzo are still very strong, you don't have to expend your face in order to get any scouting information now. And I think you'll find if you are a Sombra player that uses the mic, just telling your teammates where the critical characters are on the enemy team, getting guaranteed hacks and guaranteed focus fire, all of those things put together really dominates the game right now. So much so that I would go as far to say that Mercy is unplayable against Sombra. Yes. As strong as Mercy is, the problem is Mercy looked really good when the ranged pickoff game was the meta, where it was too expensive to go dive deep anyway, and we had a sniper meta for a while. Well now, because you can bypass all of that with Sombra, and either get focus fire onto the sniper, avoid their lines of sight to get perfect setups, or even hack the Mercy, that's just kind of over. I already think that some of the other support changes helped let them shine anyway to compete with how strong Mercy would have been even if Sombra wasn't as powerful as she is, but especially with where she's at, Mercy Zen is just too slow and too exploitable and too much backline greed. The problem is, there's other characters that really go in hard right now, and if your backline either can't defend itself or reposition itself, it basically dies for free. What are these aspects? Well, Wrecking Ball is one, but we've talked a lot about him, so I'm kind of going to put him to the side. I think at most ranks, Wrecking Ball probably isn't a good idea because he's so difficult to play. If you get good at him, you're definitely going to carry a lot of games, especially against Mercy Zen. Hammond just comes in, gets shields, knocks them up, sets up for kills. Mercy Zen gets wrecked by that, not to mention the other things that we've said about Sombra. But also, there's characters like Winston, who is the best nano boost target in the entire game. Because now, just a normal Winston dive with nano boost is so guaranteed and has so much potential to swing inside of a close range brawl. So many of the things that used to stop Winston dead in his tracks no longer do. With the advent of Brigitta and really tanky compositions, Winstons were really struggling, but now that nano boost heals Winston, he can go in, fight it up a little bit, get a nano boost, then all of a sudden be doing 80 cleave damage a second or whatever it is. And when you're doing that much damage, especially Mercy Zen, can't heal all of it. It's just not possible. So that's why in general, we're seeing at the higher levels of play, Lucio, Ana is actually the meta to supports. That doesn't mean that at every rank you should definitely pick Ana. However, if you're playing characters like Mercy right now and you're wondering why you just seemingly can never stay alive, you're constantly getting hacked, or backline dive is coming through and no one can protect you, you have to pick backline characters that have the capability of either getting away or getting mid-fight value before the Sombra shenanigans comes through. That's kind of the key. Whereas that Mercy Zen combination in previous metas was more of like a pick-off meta, now we've changed everything into being mid-fight severity. You must get big mid-fight impact off before Sombra sort of picks you apart, before Hammond comes in and lands a big initiation on you. You don't really have the time to sort of sit back and wait around and play for picks, because let's face it, one of the DPS is invisible all the time and isn't going to get picked unless they make some major mistake. Hammond doesn't get picked, at least not from range. He does when he jumps in and feeds, obviously, but the team fights are safer at range in general because of the different things we've described thus far. You don't have to play at further range. You can hide, collapse, and have bursts of impact in a meta that sort of feels reminiscent of when Ana first came into the game. You actually need your support character to be able to expend their resources at range, not need to survive in order to get it off, whereas like Mercy has to stand still and res in order to get the biggest value ability off in the game. Well, when hack is so strong and so readily available, you need to have already done something with your support utility before your backline dies, because that aggression is coming in fast. When it does come, you don't really have the time in order to get away. Now, those are the major characters that are moving where the meta's at. We're going to try to now rapid fire go through the rest of the roster to sort of place where everybody's at. First, let's run through the supports. Everybody's favorite Omnic Zenyatta, I think you'll want to only consider in two situations now. Most of the time, you're going to get punished if you play with a Mercy, but if you already have ground and you're set up and you can have a very defendable backline who's going to outskill whatever comes to pursue you, Ana Zen is very strong, but it's also very slow and vulnerable. If you play Ana Zen, you're basically saying we have the skill in our backline to defend ourselves, or you already have the powerful positioning that those two need in order to really succeed. If you don't have positioning and you're either attacking and you feel like you're getting exploited, you either probably have to swap off nowadays or have a Lucio. And I know a lot of players in ranked really hate the Lucio Zen support composition, but remember, it was one of the most dominant metas for the longest time in the pro meta. Yes, it does give your tanks less healing, but that means you have to play with a more severe and all-in engagement style, where you don't take meaningless poke damage, you go in, you frag, you trade, and you don't play to sustain. You play to fully commit to a clean engagement and wipe the enemy. You're going to see a lot of success with that, actually, if you play that properly, because there's just so much firepower between your ability to focus fire quickly with the speed boost surrounding enemies, and you have the Zenyatta in the backline providing a ton more damage. But without the Lucio, a lot of other support duos, I think, are going to kind of get farmed by some of the backline dive that's really good right now, because, for example, if the enemy team does have a Lucio and they start speeding in tanks on you and stuff, you're kind of just going to get overwhelmed, not to mention the other flanking stuff that's really strong right now. Moira, I think, is still quite usable. Not as good as some of the other options against the hack meta, though, but I do think that the gap between her ability to heal tanks is now severely in front of Mercy, whereas before it was just kind of in front. You could still argue that res on a 30-second cooldown not only cancels a mistake, but gives out, 500 or so healing. Now, really, Ana kind of does that, where Ana tossing nano boost on things is almost like a mini res, and also an aggressive offensive tool. So for the general purpose healing, Moira's going to be ahead of Mercy, way more significantly than even before, because 50 healing a second just takes forever to heal up a tank. But overall, the queen of supports right now actually is Ana, because she does the best of all worlds. She has the utility to be able to outplay backline aggression. Her ultimate is kind of like a res in the amount of burst healing that it gives in order to swing a team fight, but it also is an aggressive measure in order to confirm kills, and you kind of need these impact abilities to land in the middle of a fight, or you're going to start to get picked apart. You can't really afford to be sustaining or playing for ranged burst. A lot of playstyles look to be a lot weaker moving forward. Is Brigitta finally reined in? I think she's okay, but again, you cannot afford to play defensively with her. She's too easy to hack while left unaware. She does nothing when EMP'd. Realistically, you have to play her with Lucio, I think, and go aggressive with her stun capability and her burst combo, and then she starts to look actually pretty usable. In fact, there's been a Lucio Brigitta comp that pro teams have been running for a while that I think is drastically underrated for its ability to snowball, because if you utilize Brigitta to heal you, you get rally a lot quicker, and then rally on a bunch of squishy dive characters is actually insane. But in general, Ana's the queen and Lucio is the king. You need Lucio in a lot of these situations in order to be able to reposition and deal with the intensity of some of these team fights. You might think, well, but Lucio's really weak to hack, right? Well, the problem is you need to be able to get utility out before the hack fight starts. So speed boost gets you into the fight actually in a place where you won't lose immediately when somebody gets hacked. Whereas if you play some of these slower comps, if you're trying to push in with Ana Zen, it might not be enough. They may fall victim to backline harassment. Lucio is actually an insane character right now. I haven't spoke too much about tank characters. Let's get into them. I've mentioned nanoing Winston quite a bit because I think he is by far the best nano target in the game right now. Yes, you can probably nano in order to combine with different DPS ultimates, but the thing is, nanoing Winston gives you cart presence, brawl, offense, and charges up primal rage really well, so it works with ult economy. If you use two ultimates, nano plus let's say blade for example, you'll probably guarantee that fight for sure, but you won't get as much value in the ultimate economy than if you keep nanoing your Winston and try to edge out fights using him that way. The thing is, despite how strong all healing is in the game, if a Winston player plays well, he's going to make angles for his Ana to be able to hit abilities, and now Nano Boost keeps him alive like he's never been able to have before. It almost feels like back in the day with the really old Winston Zarya meta that we used to have with Ana in the backline. This is what Lunatic High gained their fame for. We spoke about Wrecking Ball already. Results may vary on that one, but I think Diva as well is a character that really eats up targets alive, especially when they're hacked. Her follow-up damage is actually insane when uninhibited. So with that being the case, I think dive tanks are coming back in a really big way because they can capitalize on the backline aggression that sort of is redefining the game again, but also they can reposition back in order to deal with mobility aggression, which is the basic reason why we saw dive tanks for so long. Now, what does that mean for some of our other tanking friends, especially the ones who keep their boots on the ground? Well, Orisa, oddly enough, is one of the better tanks against a Sombra because she provides a shield that stays out even when she's hacked. Whereas if you compare to Reinhardt, he really gets screwed over by this infinite stealth playstyle because she can just focus him down the entire game if she wants to. And Rein players just can't play. So if you are playing Reinhardt, I think you must have a Lucio. Unquestionably. You need to be able to speed in his aggression and then you can get it to work. But sort of this stable Rein Zarya meta that so many players played for such a long time in Season 10 and at the start of Season 11, it's just going to get farmed by Ana, Winston, Sombra. It's not going to be very good. And especially, Zarya is kind of an interesting case. I've seen some players say that they think that the rework actually was a buff. I've said in previous videos that I'm confident it's a nerf. I don't think the extra charge rate matters much when realistically what Zarya wants is for the game to be in a close range brawl type scenario. This was really strong whenever you put in triple tank or even run a full goats comp. You can just speed around and force close range engagements all day. The problem is when you have the information for perfect rotations, that permanent invis Sombras on the map, she gets EMP, which absolutely devastates multi-tank setups. The thing is, Zarya wants the enemy team either to be spamming into you, or for you to be playing such a death ball that they can't help but shoot bubbles at some point so she gets some charge, providing tankiness to the team and they can just steamroll the opposition. The thing is, permanent invis Sombra has reopened mobility to be really good in the game again. And if one of your tanks just keeps getting hacked, their ability to weave in and out their tanking presence to keep each other alive starts to fall dramatically. You hack that Rein shield, well all of a sudden, the Goats comp only has Diva and Zarya to try to protect them, and other than that, they're just free ult charge. That only lasts a couple seconds, whereas the Rein shield really gave a big death ball a massive amount of uptime. And as we've previously described in this channel anyway, Zarya already was a very overrated pick. It's so easy to just avoid her entirely and go kill her team if they're not running a full death ball, and I think even now, if they are, there's a lot of utility in the game to wreck it as well. Remember, we have Ana, Sombra, Hammond, all of them kind of break apart those multi-tank comps quite well. So I think not only will Zarya lose her overrated status, I think most of the community is going to quickly realize that she's just not very good. And what does that mean for a character like Roadhog? Well, I think he gets hit by this even worse. Because normally, Roadhog looks at a Winston and says, well, that's a matchup I win most of the time. The problem is when Ana's getting played a lot, she has a lot of utility in order to deal with Roadhog. And now, more annoyingly, at any point that Winston can just get nanoed and be at a big advantage in the duel against Roadhog. And you don't really get the same value the other way. There's not any support that can just put in resources into Roadhog to make him a really sick pick. I guess Ana's probably the best, but he's still a slow, lumbering character that you'd have to speed around. It's just not very good. Winston's just better in like every way. He cleaves, he leaps really far, gonna chase down everything and just destroy stuff in his wake. Roadhog's probably the biggest loser in this entire patch, I think. Although, if you are really good at him, you probably can hook characters like Sombra, Doomfist, Genji, whatever, but I think you're just really banking on a high-risk ability cooldown in order to justify your entire character, which has been kind of the problem with Roadhog this whole time. Should you still play him with Orisa, though? No, I think Orisa Hog has been really overrated for a long time, and you should be playing Orisa Diva in just about every scenario. The shield break is about the same, and Diva actually has the flexibility that Roadhog doesn't, although you won't be getting those sick hook combinations. You can play the enforcer role around the bunker in order to stave off the flankers that want to get around it, where Roadhog is just all in on that hook. That's all the tanks. Let's finish up the discussion with the damage department. I mentioned in an earlier video that Farah was going to get hit particularly bad by the meta, but I think she's hit even worse than I thought because of Infinite Invis Sombra being a very viable Farah counter. You have to really change your playstyle as Farah and rethink what you're even capable of doing, because unless you're super high in the air all the time, without you knowing, Sombra can sneak up behind you and get a hack angle, and that new and improved hack sends you to the ground, and Farah is one of the worst characters in the game now when hacked, and that's something you have to think about. The characters you pick, you want to make sure that their playstyle isn't going to just fall flat on its face if they get hacked. I've still gotten Farah to work when I'm not up against the Sombra. She's still a very reliable character. I think if you have a Mercy, you probably want to consider the Farah in order to give her an escape. Otherwise, the backline characters are going to have a much easier time attacking her. As with really any of the damage characters, if you're skilled enough at them and your opponent isn't countering you, you're going to be fine in ranked. But the overall meta trend, I think, is Farah is flying down to the ground and getting wrecked. An interesting character to discuss is Tracer, who you might think is quite weak to Sombra hacking her, and she is, but at the same time, I actually think she's one of the better characters in order to duel Sombra, because sometimes what you need is a character to just one-on-one chase the Sombra around and win that duel. And although you might want a character like Mccree for that, a lot of the times he's the exploitable dive target that sort of just has to shoot whatever's in front of him. He doesn't have the mobility to go chase her down or to track where she even is. Yes, he has the threat of the flashbang to kill her if she's in an obvious spot, but it's never that easy, is it? I think Mccree, if set up, can be very good, but I think you want to think about more reliable counters. One that I think I probably should have mentioned earlier was that characters like Diva or even Wrecking Ball can spam endlessly in order to do what's actually called in TF2 spy checking, where in that game you're able to disguise yourself as the enemy team, so in order for them to know if you are in fact a spy or not, they have to just sort of spam at you. You kind of do that same thing for Sombra nowadays with infinite stealth, so characters that have a lot of good spam can sort of just try to check typical angles to try to spot out the Sombra. And that's another thing that I think Tracer is decent at, but to some degree you may just need your own Sombra to mirror her. She is quite strong. That's why I've mentioned her 100 times in this video already. However, a sleeper character that you don't want to miss out on is Torbjorn, because whenever we're talking about flanker harassment, Torbjorn's turret is actually a really smart call. I think you always want to go with him in the support slot though, and try to play around the turret, avoiding damage rather than trying to engage and getting use out of healing. The team comp feels a bit wonky if he's in the damage slot, and plays a lot better actually if he's in the support slot. That turret will be able to help try to punish Sombra if she comes out of stealth at an awkward angle. The armor is really effective against her damage type, and also I think we want to keep an eye out for him because he's getting a rework rework, possibly even in the next patch. I don't really know. I think right now he's a pretty good answer, and as long as his kit is reminiscent of what it does now, it'll probably be pretty good a lot of the time against these infiltration playstyles. Another character that's low-key insane right now is Mei, because if you're good enough with her Icicle, it's one of the best projectiles in the game. I mean, it headshots, no fall-off damage. She's like a little Hanzo. Her wall can have incredible value for your frontline fight if you can split off the enemy. If you block the line of sight from, let's say, Ana from her tank, no matter what the tank is, it's probably going to get killed thanks to your focus fire. But also, if you're having trouble with Wrecking Ball, she's one of the best answers against him as well, because he doesn't really have the time to get away from her freeze, and then when he does get frozen, his head hitbox reveals itself, making for easy follow-up for your team. Also, I'd say the area of the map that she likes to play in isn't too susceptible to hack. So whereas like Wrecking Ball goes deep into the enemy team, or Farah tries to get an angle, if either of them get hacked, all of a sudden they're sort of just almost a free kill. Whereas Mei more or less is going to be playing around your team, so if she gets hacked in the middle of everybody, yes, her cooldowns are down, and maybe she can be focused, but she has quite a lot of health. Most of the time, you're going to be spamming right clicks anyway, and her cooldowns are long, which is important against Sombra. If you have really fast cooldowns, and you're expected to use them quite frequently, all of a sudden that hack comes in and it disrupts your ability to play normally. Tracer's blinks, Doomfist cooldowns, Hammond, etc. Whereas Mei, Ice Block, and Wall are on a 12 and 10 second cooldown, so you may have already even used it and got value out of it when you get hacked anyway. Another hidden gem is Doomfist. We have shown a video on Doomfist Sombra dives, and you might think to yourself, if the enemy team's running a Sombra, does that mean Doomfist is unpickable? Well, not exactly. He might be the target that she focuses down, but the thing is, somebody's getting hacked. The question is, are you able to play your character and get value out of them before the hack value comes through? You need a character that is out of line of sight and then comes into the fight, gets value, and then gets out. Doomfist is kind of that guy. He's so immediate with his skill set that although hack definitely does mess him up, he can still outplay it, whereas a character like Farah is really slow, right? She's looking to poke for a long time. Just the mere presence of her flank is sort of her strength. Her getting hacked removes her from the game. Whereas Doomfist probably already was hiding and then gets in quick, gets out quick. He has more room to be able to outplay the hack. But just like Hammond, you need to be sick with him. However, he does pair quite well with Ana, I'd say. Almost as good of a nano target as Winston in terms of being able to heal him up again and give him that tanking presence to get his cooldowns back in the fight. And he sort of fits the mold of the severity of mid-fight impact that you need in order to get wins in this meta. Onto the last ranged characters, Soldier, Mccree, Hanzo, Widowmaker. All of these characters are playable, but because you don't know where backline aggression could be coming at any time, your results may vary. Their impact might actually just either be too slow or needing to be too safe, when really you have to be looking behind your back at all times to be viable. If you're playing Widowmaker and you don't see the enemy until they come out of stealth and start shooting in the back, are you ever really able to get set up to play her properly? Kind of no. And although she doesn't really mind getting hacked at all, she doesn't like getting shot in the back for free. So oddly enough, I think in some ways Sombra's even better against Widowmaker than she is against Doomfist in terms of just the playstyle approach to the space you'll have to operate in. Ultimately, Mccree probably fares the best out of all of them because he has the stun in order to deal with her. His problem is he takes more setting up, unfortunately. A few more characters that I think are easy traps to fall into right now, no pun intended, Junkrat, Symmetra, and Reaper. They're just a little bit too slow and need your enemy to make mistakes to get value out of. You might think Reaper's quite good against Hammond because he can do so much damage to tanks. The problem is, I think there's even easier ways to punish Hammond, especially with CC, and if he is able to outposition you, which he definitely can, he has insane mobility, that Reaper pick isn't providing as much as you might think. If you can kill the Hammond every time, or the Winston, fine. The problem is they have mobility that you don't. So if they're getting value on the map elsewhere, and you're sort of lurking around hoping to find something, Reaper's not very good. Junkrat kind of feels in a similar way. It's still maybe a bit better than these three I just mentioned, but the problem is, does he do enough in order to stop Hammond or to get a burst kill in the backline? He's just a bit too slow in general, and that's sort of how I feel about Symmetra as well. You need a bit more immediate impact in the fight, or else you're going to get rolled over by the teams that have it. So the more characters you have on your team that sort of need the fight to extend out for them to really show where their value is, I think are going to start to lose out. Bastion, I don't know if he'll ever be playable again now that Sombra has infinite stealth. I mean, at any point, her team can cause a distraction and she can get a perfect hack on him in order to pull him out of the entire reason why you're picking him, Sentry Mode. Even on his best map, Junkertown, I think Bastion is going to be in a really weak spot. Now, I believe the only character I haven't mentioned yet is Genji, who oddly enough, I think is one of the best options. Yes, hack does wreck him, but if you have the skill set, you can play around it, avoid it. You have the mobility to get away from Sombra or to get your impact in quick before she can commit to just hacking you. The problem that you don't want is for the fight to go too slow and then your character to get hacked and then their value to be sort of robbed entirely. Whereas if the fight commits and you're able to dash in and you start brawling or something and you get hacked in the mix of all that with the rest of your team fighting, as long as everyone's value is set up in the team fight, you can really minimize the impact that hack is going to have on your team. That's why you need speed boost in order to get in and actually start fighting and commit and get your pieces in place, because if you're sort of spread out a bit too much or playing in a way that requires too much setup, you're going to get picked apart. Of course, pairing with Sombra as well, I think Genji is one of the most reliable and best DPS, which is a shame why I'm leaving him till the end. If the enemy team's EMP'd, Dragon Blade just absolutely cleans up. He doesn't want to be facing off against Sombra, but I think he's quite powerful against a lot of the other characters in the game. Yes, there's dive tanks and stuff, but he can outposition them. He can play to harass the backline. Although characters like Ana and Lucio are kind of difficult to kill, I think they're easier for Genji to kill than, let's say, a mid-air Mercy was, whereas to track down a Mercy, Tracer's probably a bit better because she has hit scan and multiple blinks in order to deal with the Guardian Angel. Genji likes it when his targets are a bit slower and he can sort of square up against them and use his mobility advantage over them. When the mobility is kind of similar, I think he struggles a bit more. And it's him, I think, that's really going to keep a character like Mccree in check right now, because Genji can be all over him, and frankly, a lot of the other DPS. He synergizes with Ana if you want to go for the Nano Blade. I don't think it's required, but you definitely got it there. The only thing he doesn't do is protect your backline. But if you think you need to do that for the situation, I already mentioned a bunch of other characters that I think are going to help stabilize that. So when you need aggressive damage, I think Genji is probably one of your best bets. Well, guys, that's everything for this Season 11 meta discussion. I hope a big patch doesn't get announced this week that totally undoes all of the critical thinking we've put into this video, but let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. You may not believe that Sombra is so strong, but I think over time you'll realize that, yeah, she's kind of the top of the meta right now. Really deals with a lot of stuff very well, and although that might become obnoxious eventually, it at least had a very positive impact in terms of a lot of the other characters that are getting pushed up in their viability when they used to not look as viable before. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. See you guys next time.